Do you
Yeah.
see us going into a rate cut environment in 2024 and that lighting the fuse for like a more of like a risk off and a risk on environment?
Hey everyone, welcome to our latest TDR crypto exclusive. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking in as we gear up for the holiday season. The crypto space. We look back, and I think one word that defines this space for the last 12 months is resurgence. It's back, and it's going to segue into a strong year of 2024. Why? Well, let's welcome in one of the best thought leaders in the space, Mark Yusko, CEO of Morgan Creek Digital. Back to the podcast. Happy holidays. Good to see you. How are things?
No, happy holidays. Great to be with you. I love how we coordinated. You got the dark green, we got the gray, I got the green and gray, holiday season. No, it has been a resurgent year. I love that word. Lots of single words we could use. We could use bullish, right? We could use resilient. But I think the word I'm still focused on is early. We're still 2024.
That's the crazy part.
It's the crazy part. This 2024, which is now just a couple weeks away, is the beginning. It's the beginning of this new era in this evolution of computing that I've been talking about for years, all the way back to the advent of the mainframe in 54. 14 years later, the microchip comes along in 68. 14 years later, the personal computer in 1982. 14 years later, the internet in 96, another 14 years. Why is it always 14 years? Well, because it's always the young people. So it's a half generation. It's the creative class that creates new stuff. Mark Andreessen, 19, Larry and Sergey in their 20s. So 2010, the mobile net, and now 2024 with what I call it the truth net, because what blockchain does, it replaces trust with truth. Now we can call it whatever we want, but it's the beginning of the cycle. And it says, well, what about all the last 10 years? Right? That was like 86 to 96, where the internet was just getting formed.
Yeah.
You had the DARPANET, and you had some companies, and they were but it wasn't until Tim Berners-Lee wrote the first web page in 91. Mm-hmm. Think about that, 91. Until then, we got some applications like the browser from Andreessen that made the internet accessible. And then it was Yahoo and Google and eBay and all these companies. And this internet thing became real. Yeah. And contrary to, Paul Krugman, right? The internet will never be more important than the fax machine. I guess Krugman's back with some nonsense about how, we've defeated inflation with very little cost. And Dan Morehead just eviscerated him with data.
For good reason. For good reason.
What do you mean? Very little cost,
yeah.
Krugman. I mean, we printed 10 trillion with a T dollars to quote unquote defeat inflation, but prices are still rising, and they're actually rising faster than the target. And the target is bad, right? 2% of your wealth stolen from you every year, which is what inflation is. It's a stealth wealth tax, is nonsense. And the fact that they've foisted that upon us since 1913, the advent of the Fed, and tried to convince us that it's good for us, it's like seed oils, right? They're not good for you. They're a waste product that companies put into our food to poison us. I mean, that's not good for me.
Right.
So I mean, speaking of inflation, I mean, a lot of people thought that the last crypto bull market was sparked by zero rate environments. Free money being everywhere. I mean, we just saw Powell come out last week, telegraphed rate cuts. I mean, you were a macro guy. You still are a macro guy, I'm sure. Do you see us going into a rate cut environment in 2024 and that lighting the fuse for like a more of like a risk off and a risk on environment?
Again, such an important question. And you know how I feel about this. Our whole society is all about answers.
Yeah.
That's not what's important. What's important is the questions. And the thing I enjoy about doing this show with y'all is you actually think about good questions. And that question right now is the one that's really driving everything that we're going to think about going forward. Because what people just, I don't know why they don't understand it, but they just don't seem to understand. When we talk about assets, we have to talk about what we're denominating them in.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I always say this like about my house, right? So in the last 3 years, since the lockdowns, I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's hot because Apple's coming here and Google's coming here and all that stuff. But the reality is, according to Zillow, my house went up by 50%.
Mine too. And I laugh at it all the time.
And like, my house didn't grow. It didn't get more efficient. It actually wore out a little bit. I had to put money into it because some stuff wore out. So what happened, the thing I denominate the house in, dollars, got worse. To your point, we had the free money era. We printed, look, it took 244 years to get to 10 trillion. And then we did another 10 in 18 months. 244 years, 18 months. So the fact that the things that we denominate in that currency, real estate, stocks, gold, Bitcoin, whatever, appreciated. Well, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And will always be one Bitcoin. And there'll only forever be 21 million. And there actually won't even be that many because some are lost and stolen. But it's a finite asset. And it's being chased by these ever devaluing currencies, yen, euro, dollars, whatever. So when we look at that last bull run, it was partly exacerbated by the fact that they doubled the money supply. Therefore, they cut the value of the currency. So Bitcoin should have doubled. So the move from 15 pre-pandemic to 30 is simply the dollar going down 50%. That's all that is. Yeah. The rest, like when we went from 10 to 59, well, what's that? Well, that was $10 trillion going, not 10 trillion, sorry, 10 billion, $10 billion going into GBTC in an asset that only trades at the time, about 6 billion a day.
Right.
Because so much of Bitcoin is held either, again, lost or stolen, or in multi-sigs where not everybody agrees, or hodlers, people who don't want to sell at, they say, I won't sell at any price. Sure you will. There's a price at which you'll take some and convert it to fiat to pay your bills or whatever. And there's some where you say, okay, I'm going to take a little running money and stash it aside in maybe gold or something else. And there are others that say, no, I'm not going to sell ever. Fine. But the amount that does trade is relatively small. So if you increase the demand, like what's coming on January 8th, right? I'm making the call, right? Calling my shot, like the babe, right?
It's for the Bitcoin ETFs.
They're going to crown the king on January 8th, right? Which also happens to be my son's birthday, which is kind of cool. But Elvis's birthday, and why that day? Well, the 10th is when they have to decide on BlackRock. And they always like to do this on Sunday night, Monday morning. So they leak it on Sunday night so the big dogs can front run. And then the general public gets to react to the press release on Monday morning. So that's what I think is going to happen. But
do you think that's a sell the news event, or you think it's going to do it?
This is a buy the rumor, buy the news. And
right.
Well, let me go back, but let me go back and answer your question.
Interesting.
In this year, 2024, Powell just telegraphed, right? He fired the starting gun, and stocks are rallying, and Bitcoin's rallying, everything's rallying, because he said we're probably going to cut rates next year. Now, why the frick does he feel the need to cut rates? We're just barely back to the bottom of the normal range. Got 140 years of history. The range of the 10 years between 5 and 7%. We were barely back to the bottom of that range. And then bam, we're down to 4% again. So why does he feel the need to cut? Because we polluted the data for a decade with QE, and people seem to think that that's normal. Yeah. That is absolutely abnormal. So your point about macro, I've been screaming about this with the other, I call us the OMGs, the old macro guys. So us old macro guys, myself and Dan and Raul and Novogratz, and all, we were /are. It's like when you meet someone from the Marines and you say, oh, they were a Marine. No, I am a Marine. You're always a Marine. Just like, and it's not the same. I'm not equating Marines and macro guys, but once you're a macro guy, you're always a macro guy. Or once you're a value, like Seth Klarman says, you're either genetically predisposed to value or you're not. Not good or bad. I'm just inherently a value guy.
Yeah.
So I look at what's happening. I say, well, what is he doing? Well, the reality is debt. We have massive amounts of debt, and we have no capacity to pay it back. And so there are only 4 things you can do with debt. Let's get my hand on the right place. 4 things. You can pay it back. Nope. If you taxed all the assets of all the people in America, you couldn't pay back the debt. Forget their income. If you taxed all their wealth, you couldn't pay back the debt. So that's not going to happen. You can restructure it. Well, in order to restructure debt, someone has to take the other side, right? So if you say, I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar, someone has to say, sure, okay, I'll settle up. That's not happening because the Chinese aren't going to take 50 cents on the dollar, and neither are the Japanese or anybody else. Russians for sure aren't taking 50 cents on the dollar. So you're not going to be able to restructure it. You can default on it, right? You can pull an Argentina or Venezuela, you can default. But then what happens if you're in power? You leave, you get kicked out. So you're not going to default on it. So you can do what every empire has done for the history of mankind. You're going to devalue it.
Yeah.
You're going to inflate your way out by printing more. And in the old days, they didn't print more. They actually clipped the coins, right? That's why you have ridges on the quarter, right? Because they literally clipped your coins and took the silver back. Now they're just going to print more currency. Now they don't actually print physical money. They just punch a button and make more ones and zeros on a ledger. But because there's no governor to that, since we're on a fiat standard, and they can decree, literally by fiat, by us, the government, saying we're going to print more money, they can devalue the currency. And those that have the debt win. So you punish savers.
Yeah.
Right? People on fixed incomes, you punish them by having higher inflation. And there's this great cartoon. It showed this jumbo jet coming in for a landing. And at the top, the bump out of the 747 was the rich. And then, the middle class in the main cabin. And then the rest, they call them the rest, were clinging to the landing gear. And it says, your view on the landing depends on your seat. So the rich are super happy about the soft landing / no landing. The people clinging to the landing gear, they don't like it so much.
Yeah.
And it's because the things they care about, like they don't own homes. They don't give a shit that homes are up in price because they don't own one and they now can't get one. And they're depressed about that. And the stuff that they buy every day costs a lot more.
Yeah.
And their money doesn't go as far because they're on fixed incomes like minimum wage or, Medicare or Social Security. So that cohort of people is being stolen from. And I think what Powell sees is, all right, we have an unsustainable debt load. And we can't pay enough because, when interest rates were 0, what should Ms. Yellen have done?
Right.
She should have extended the duration, right? Should have refinanced.
I forget who it was. Someone slammed her for not doing it, for not doing the refi.
Every American refied. How many people do you know that now sitting on 3% mortgage? Now they can't move ever because now mortgage rates are 7, so they're stuck. But they did refi, and their payments went down, so they're a little better off. Actually, a lot better off. But we didn't refi the debt. And now we have 21%, the highest level ever, that's going to refinance in the next 12 months at significantly higher rates. And that's going to put a huge burden on, and look, the cult of Kelton, right? Stephanie Kelton, this ridiculously stupid economist. I shouldn't say she's stupid. She might be an intelligent person. Her theory is stupid. It's just stupid, right? That you can print as much money as you want with no consequences if you're the world reserve currency. If that were true, then Portugal would still be the world reserve currency.
Good point.
Correct.
But they're not. And Spain and the Netherlands and France and the UK. At some point, you'll blow it, right? The UK was the world reserve currency for 75 years. The sun never set on the British Empire. In 1913, they were the most powerful country in the world. We were an emerging market run by a gang at that point, actually 2 gangs, the Irish and the Italians. And we were fighting a lot, if you've seen the movie Gangs in New York. And And we were an emerging market, right? We were not powerful. We were not anything. We were kind of an afterthought.
Yep.
The UK invaded Mesopotamia, incurred a bunch of debt. The pound sterling collapsed. We ascended. Now, it took 31 years to 1944 to do Bretton Woods, where we seized the power. And mostly we went to nuclear power for naval superiority.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrested control from the UK. So now the dollar is the world reserve currency. But here's the problem. We invaded twice Mesopotamia, incurred a bunch of debt, coincidentally, and the dollar started to collapse. The renminbi is ascendant. China's become more powerful. Now we're in Cold War 2.0. We're pissing all over China, and everybody's afraid of China. But China is playing a long game, and they figured out a long time ago that the next war will not be fought with ships. It'll be fought with chips. Everything in the future is about cyber superiority, about digital superiority, about AI superiority. That's what the future is. And we won't have kinetic wars.
Pardon? They're winning that war right now, don't you think?
Oh, they are. Absolutely. Look, they graduate 4.5 million STEM engineers every year.
Mm-hmm.
We graduate 500K. Now, 500K is a good number. And people say, but all theirs are terrible. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's say half of theirs are bad, which is not true, but let's say half are bad. That's still 5 times more than us. And
it's the law of averages for their population. It was like Bezos was up yesterday. He was like, I'm sure you saw this. He was like, I see 1 trillion people being amongst the stars. And then they were like, well, why do you see that? He was like, because of the law of averages. If there's 1 trillion humans, you're going to have 1,000 Einsteins and 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Musks, not just the ones that we currently have here. So, I mean, yeah, that makes complete sense that China's
good point.
It's the law of averages. Even if half.
There's just more people. And, and yes, they have a 200-year-ish failed experiment, with socialism and communism, sure. But what people forget, and this is the part I think is so interesting, 1,800 of the last 2,000 years, China was number one. For 1,800 of 2,000 years, China was number one, right? They invented all the things that we take for granted, like gunpowder and democracy and all these things.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe democracy even predates them. But although it's interesting, when you look at Socrates and Seneca quotes, which are 2,000 to 2,200 years old, and you look at Confucianism quotes, which are 2,600 years old, they kind of sound the same. So maybe they did predate Greece and et cetera. But most of the world was run by China. And then they had this, like I said, 200-year failed experiment with communism and Maoism. But now they're back. And the thing that I think is interesting is, people criticize Xi and all this stuff. But then he comes over here, we clean up a whole city. Like my son lives in San Francisco, so you wouldn't even recognize San Francisco. Like whatever they do with the homeless people, I don't know, but they're gone. And the streets were clean and there were no needles and it was amazing.
Yeah.
People giving this guy a standing ovation. Everybody's mad. There's a CCP. Like, well, why does everyone love this guy? Well, he's a visionary leader. And here's the thing. Whether you love him or hate him, he believes, like he literally believes, this is pretty amazing, in what's called the mandate from heaven. So Confucianism says that the Chinese people have a mandate from the heavens to be the superpower. It's a belief. Like he believes that, right? That his mission is to, over the next 28 years, they're 2 years into a 30-year plan, to move from a moderately prosperous socialism economy to global superpower.
And everybody's bought into that in that country, right?
Pardon?
Everybody's bought in that country. Like they're all moving in the same direction, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like all countries. There's probably a few splinter groups that aren't bought in, and there's probably a few that are being persecuted, just like every other country.
Yeah.
And we hear the stories about the Uyghurs and other. I've never been to see concentration camps over there. I don't know if they're true or not. My guess is there's probably some persecution going on. but we have religious persecution just about every country I can think of. So people tend not to like people different from them ish. I mean, some are more tolerant than others, but generally speaking, there's persecution in lots of places. But overall, to your point, Anthony, it's just a law of large numbers. There are, if you've been to Shanghai, this is the thing. Most people say, they don't know what they're doing. Go to Shanghai sometime. Not you, but anyone. Go to Shanghai and see a city of 50 million people. Right? 50 million people, like in one city. And see how it works and how it's clean and how the buildings, I mean, I go to Shanghai and you see 3 buildings next to each other that are over 120 stories. And then you look at the New York skyline, you're like, oh, that's so quaint. Like the New York skyline is amazing. It's amazing.
I've always been fascinated by the economic zones in China and how we need to do something like that here to an extent. I mean, they turbocharge growth and they're just feats in themselves.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so to go back to your original question about crypto, this is a crypto show. Crypto in 2024, I believe, is going to be an incredibly powerful year.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right.
And it's because of an alignment. Now, I will admit that I watched this crazy, it's horrible. One of the worst television shows I've ever seen. It's like this new Netflix thing called Family Shifts, Family.
I haven't seen it yet, but
Swap,
I've heard
Family
of it.
Swap, Family Swap. It's called Family Swap. And they're trying to meet, a new, holiday movie that people watch instead of Elf or Home Alone.
Yeah.
Oh my God. One of the most cringeworthy shows I have ever seen. Horrible.
Have you watched John Baptiste? The guy that won 5 Grammys last. Oh, it's amazing. I watched it last night. It's a documentary on him. Strongly.
What's it called?
Man, I got to do something
John
to erase
Baptiste.
But in that show, there was one cool thing. They had a planetary alignment where 5 of the planets were in a line. And that's kind of what we have coming into 2024. We have this celestial alignment of all the things, all the cycles. So we have the 4-year cycle in Bitcoin, right? The halving happens in April, early May, depending on the blocks. But that's going to happen. We've got this wave of liquidity that's about to be unleashed with the approval of the ETF. We've got this cyclical wave of it looks like the economy's slowing, therefore the Fed's going to go back to accommodation, which will devalue the dollar more, which means if we price Bitcoin in dollars, the price of Bitcoin goes up. I mean, that's just the way it works. We've got a technological wave where 650,000 people were laid off from big tech. That's a lot. And it turns out some of them don't have enough money to never work again. Some do, but many don't. And turns out some of them are like really smart. And so they are starting new companies and in these cycles post downturn. So everyone says, well, we didn't have a recession. Fine, you can believe that. I don't really care. 2022 was as much a recession as 2001, right? We had 2 negative quarters. We had 1% growth for the year. That's a recession. Now, you don't want to call it a recession because you juiced the employment numbers. I don't really care. But post 2001, 2002, 2003 were some of the best vintages for business formation, venture capital, innovation. And it's because during those downturns, people get displaced.
Right.
And turns out, most powerful force in the universe, not Bitcoin. I mean, that's close. But no, I'm just kidding. Is human creativity. Human creativity is unbelievable. And actually, the reason I am the most excited about Bitcoin, I'm excited about other things in digital assets, but Bitcoin in particular, and I'm stealing this directly from Jimmy Song. Although Jimmy got mad at me. I saw him at an event recently. He was mad at me because I let him take the iris picture of mine for the WorldCoin thing. And that doesn't mean I'm supporting WorldCoin. Doesn't mean I'm an investor in WorldCoin. Doesn't even believe I believe in it. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna see what it's like. And you tell me you don't save my eyeball picture. I don't really care about my eyeballs. I already gave them to Clear, so whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not really worried about that. but I want to have a digital ID. I want to have a unique digital identifier, little barcode. Cool. But he was mad at me that I did that. So anyway, I apologize, Jimmy. I didn't mean it. But Jimmy talks about if you get paid in fiat, you're a slave. And it's a really politically charged word. You're not supposed to use it, but you are, right? You're a slave. Why? Because the government can steal the wealth back from you through devaluation. Yeah. If we migrate to a deflationary currency like Bitcoin, and you got paid in Bitcoin, you're no longer a slave. You unshackle yourself. And what that does is it unleashes human creativity because you no longer have to work your slave and job, right? It's the Bachman-Turner Overdrive song, and quit your slave and job and get your pay, or start your slave and job and get your pay, right? That goes all the way back to the 70s. They've been talking about this. And so people knew that it was debt slavery and fiat slavery, but we didn't know how to break out of it because we needed the money to buy the food and pay the bills. Well, now if you can have an asset that actually appreciates as the dollar devalues,
yes,
you have a store of value, and you can take time to think, to create. And not everybody will be good at it, but the ones that are, I think it unleashes amazing potential. And the thing that gets me excited, and why I call it the truth net, is the trust industry has existed for 838 years. So the Medicis formed these first banks. They stole the idea from the Portuguese monks, the Knights Templar, and they created fractional reserve banking. Okay, great. Fractional reserve banking has had a great run for 838 years. And it doesn't mean that it necessarily has to go away, but the idea of two ledgers controlled by someone that we trust to oversee it, right? And that we pay money to. So $7 trillion gets extracted from the global system for trust, right? To verify that my account has my amount of money in it. That when I transfer it to you, the auditors come in and say it happened. Or the broker makes sure that my security is where they say it is. All of that trust can be replaced with truth. Because if we have a blockchain that says Mark has a Bitcoin, I don't need JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank or any broker or any accountant or any lawyer or anyone. It's there. It's truth.
However,
and if we liberate $7 trillion, just think about this. If we liberate $7 trillion,
and it's going back to the people.
It's going back to the
people that are operating. Yeah.
But what will they do with it? They'll invest it. They'll create.
Yeah.
And I watched.
Is it inevitable then? Like the old regime, they don't like the truth. They want control.
No. They don't like it.
Right?
No, they don't like it because they are the beneficiaries of that $7 trillion. That is their income.
Do you think like what Elizabeth Warren's doing right now, do you think that she's actually going to get any traction? Like with her and Jamie Dimon spouting off about they'd shut it down if they could, terrorism, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, if she looks in the mirror, like the US dollar is the largest used medium for money laundering and terrorism on the planet.
Come on, 100%. Look, if you have a choice, if you're a bad guy, let's pretend I'm a bad guy for a second. I'm really not a bad guy, but let's pretend I'm a bad guy. And I meet you for lunch, Anthony, and I bring my backpack and I put it down on the bench and we have a nice lunch. And then I leave and you're like, hey, Mark, your backpack. And I just keep walking and you look in the backpack and it's full of cash. And you're like, oh, Mark wants me to do him a favor. Okay, got it. Or should I put my hands on a keyboard and send you money? Which is easier to track, right? Sacco money or fingers on a keyboard?
Yeah.
Fingers on a keyboard, way easier to track. So if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to use, now here's the question for Ms. Warren, and I hope you're listening, Ms. Warren. Where the fuck is the $3 trillion that's missing? I'm deadly serious on this. Where is the $3 trillion that's gone missing while you've been in charge of the Banking and Finance Committee? So under your watch, $3 trillion has gone missing in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in all these places. Tell me where it is. So when she gives me that answer, then I'll listen to anything she has to say. But look, to answer your question, again, good question. Why do they lambaste it?
Mhm.
Fear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're threatening their livelihood.
Yeah.
Not you, but we collectively are threatening their livelihood. And look, I didn't have anything to do with this. Jameson Lopp and all the original developers, that's who's threatening. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, they are. I guess it's a he because he identified once as a he. But they created this thing that threatens the livelihood of the money changers.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
And look, I've been reading this really interesting book. It's called The New World Order. And it basically tracks the history of the Rothschild clan and the history of, it's some scary stuff. I mean, it's some scary, scary stuff. And I probably shouldn't say this out loud because they'll come get me, but it's some scary stuff. And every war is simply a money-making exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Financed by the people
the
at the
United
top.
States, I always say this, the United States wages war not to win, but just to spend money.
Spend money.
We need to juice the
It's
the
always
MIC.
been that way. When Russia was going into recession 10 years ago, what did they do? Start dropping bombs in the middle of the desert. Afghanistan has been occupied for 75 years, either by us or by Russia. It's just an alternating place to drop bombs so we can send checks to Raytheon. I mean, call it what it is. And, this was great. She subpoenaed or sent a letter. It wasn't a subpoena. It was a letter, paper tiger, to the Blockchain Association last night saying, we demand to know how many, military contractors and you have. And somebody sent back, as soon as you tell us how many ex-military and contractors work at Raytheon, Lockheed, General Dynamics, then we'll let you know.
Yeah.
Right.
So, then it's mic drop. She's not going to say anything.
Oh God, no. And look, Jamie,
and that's the biggest, I think that's the biggest difference between war today versus say war from 30 years. It's you have access to information that statement alone is going to get people to think. There's platforms that are available when it comes to that. So you can't get away with some of the things that you used to 30 years ago, which causes this innovation to say, screw the system. And this is the emergence as to what you're talking about pertaining to crypto and Bitcoin. But do you see this old regime in any ways that want control? Like there's going to be a lot of challenges as they try to prevent this growth from this industry. Like what are those challenges that it's inevitable.
It's the then they fight you phase. I mean, look, we are, Chad, we are in the then they fight you phase. And I've talked about this for a while, right? 09 to 15, first they ignore you. Bunch of nerds and geeks. You go play with your magic internet money. Have fun. Knock yourself out. 16 to 21, then they laugh at you. Oh, my God, you guys are so ridiculous. Okay, it's $1 billion. Oh, it's a $20 billion. Oh, it's $100 billion. Ha, 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 ha. It's just, fake, phony money. 2022 to now, and I think through 2027, then they fight you. And why do they fight you? Well, because you're threatening, and this is not just this. This is every incumbent being threatened by disruptive technology, whether it was the, horse and buggy, or whether it was the train, or whether it was, early days of gas oil lamps versus electricity. There's this great ad from like 1903 or whatever of electric wires and this demon coming out of the wires. Like electricity was it's the same thing they try to demonize Bitcoin, right? It's some demonic thing that's going to, be bad for you. But the reality is fear is how you control people.
Yes.
It's how you elicit the outcome you want, right? And those in power will always fear competition, and they will always fear disruption. And this technological innovation is, as I believe, as fundamental as the internet was, right? The internet was fundamental in that it changed the availability of information. Mm-hmm. Information became bidirectional for the first time. And look, we can go all the way back in history. From, in the earliest days, the church had the monopoly, right? They owned everything. They were in charge of everything. And us plebs went once a week to church. We couldn't read and write, and we listened, and they told us what to think, how to think, what to do, where to go, who to pay our taxes to, work the land for as a serf. And it wasn't a really great existence, but it was better than, perishing. So we struggled through it. The printing press busted that monopoly wide open, because now you could educate people. You could teach people. You could distribute information. You didn't have to listen to the propaganda coming from one pastor. You could actually hear what was going on somewhere around the world through a letter. It took days and weeks and months, but it busted that monopoly. So then what happened? The media took over. And the media, either state-owned or state-controlled, right? We always say, China has state-owned media. I mean, different than ABC, NBC, CBS, saying the same talking points. I mean, have you ever watched, I don't watch the shows on Sunday, but I love when they do a compilation of all three networks. The people are saying the exact same words, like the same word. Exact same.
Well, the Clinton administration, back in the mid-90s, they allowed a bill. The corporations could come in and basically buy out these media companies. And that was the end of all journalism right then and there.
It's not even that. You've got the FBI and other government organizations that are actually monitoring and influencing what they're saying.
100%. But then what happened? The internet busted that monopoly, right? Yep. What you guys do day in, day out is real journalism, right? It is it's talking to sources. It's having dialogue and debate in search of truth. It's not, putting propaganda out. It's not creating fake news, right? Call it what you want, or alternative facts. I'm like, no, there are facts. There are only facts. There are opinions. There's lots of opinions, but there are no alternative facts. There's one set of facts. But opinions are fast and furious. But now we have a platform, the internet, where information became bidirectional. And I use a simple example of Milei getting elected down in Argentina. In the old days, if I wanted to know about the Argentinian election, I had to wait for New York Times to send a reporter to BA, write a story, send it back to New York, get it edited. 3 days later, it shows up on the 17th page of the New York Times, and I got to physically find it. Okay?
Right.
Now, I can go onto Twitter and watch a periscope of people standing in line chanting his name. Like, that dude's going to win. So that bidirectionality busted the monopoly. And where did all the market cap of the big asset or the big content owners go? To the streamers, to the independents. And so now information busted the media monopoly and the commerce monopoly.
Yeah.
Because Amazon is a better solution than mom and pop stores. And yes, it's sad that mom and pop stores get whacked by Amazon, but there's something to be said of not having to drive all over town to get the toilet paper that I know I'm going to need, and it just shows up in my house. That's just a superior way.
Agreed.
And I still like to shop. I love to shop.
But once in a while, you like to shop.
Once in a while, not every day, right? And not for the stuff that I know, like toothpaste. I don't want to shop for toothpaste. I just want it to show up in my house. And so, but now we have this technology that is busting the last monopoly, the trust monopoly, the bank monopoly. And they're terrified of it. And I understand that you're terrified of it. I would be terrified of it too, because
they grew up in a generation. It was the greatest economy that they ever built in human history. That's tough to let go, but change is inevitable.
I piss off the maxis when I say this. I actually applaud the fractional reserve bankers.
Okay.
I believe fractional reserve banking is why we're able to do this right now. Why we don't spend all our time foraging for food and trying to survive, and why we have leisure time, and why we have intellectual time, and why we have productive time, because fractional reserve banking takes the assets of a community and makes them more powerful. Okay. And people can say, no, it's a bankrupt system. Like, yes, it is, but it works. Now you can abuse it like Lehman and global financial crisis, and then it breaks down. But the core elements of 10 to 12 times levered fractional reserve banking, I believe, separates the great from the lesser. And I ask people all the time, name a country you would live in that either does not have or has a poorly functioning fractional reserve system.
You wouldn't.
I'll wait,
No.
right? Because there isn't one. You're going to go Democratic Republic of Congo? Not by choice.
Yeah.
Not by choice. And that's not no offense to the people that live there, but I'm not moving there by choice.
No.
And I'm not going to Venezuela. As beautiful as Venezuela is, I ain't moving there.
No.
So I want a good system. But that system is inferior to the Bitcoin standard, where now we have a triple entry accounting system instead of a dual entry system, where I don't have to trust JP Morgan or Bank of America with my wealth. I don't have to ask permission to use it. This is what they're
That's
really.
That's the worst.
Oh no,
So
no, that's the worst.
I freaked out and be right before COVID, like the week it was announced, and I went to Wells Fargo and I asked for a above average withdrawal.
Yep.
And they literally were asking me what I was doing with the money, why I wanted it. First of all, they didn't even have it. They had to have a truck come the next day to give me the cash. And I was like, look, I'm going to be just candid and honest with you. I don't give a shit what I'm doing with the money. It's mine. It's not yours. It's mine.
But Anthony, there's your problem.
I know.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. Once we give it to them, it is theirs. And it's a subtlety that most people don't understand. Like if you look at Bank of America's balance sheet, it doesn't say Shad, Mark, and Anthony's money.
Right.
It says Bank of America's money. And we do have an IOU. We do have a line item on their ledger. They have a liability to us, but it's on their discretion. Like in the fine print, it actually says, like in 2012, when you were in Cyprus and you woke up and they said, you know what? You only got 25 cents left. We took the other 75 as a bail-in because we made a bunch of bad loans to a bunch of oligarchs. So that's real. Now, but then, so why do we have that? Well, what happens if you put all your cash in your house? You get robbed, right?
It's a risk.
People is a big risk. And so, and it's really hard to take a sack of cash and go to the store. That sucks, right? It's much better to use a little, plastic card.
Try doing it with gold. Try doing it with gold.
Try doing it with gold, right?
Yeah.
I always say, look, the reason gold is going to be replaced by Bitcoin, ultimately as the base layer of money, is if I had a bar of gold, which if I were Kyle Bass, I would reach under and I would grab one of his bars of gold that he keeps under his desk. Yeah. And he has a 24 kilogram Australian gold coin. Oh my God. I love it. That is awesome.
Oh, dude.
That is awesome.
I've got peace dollars right here. I literally keep these on my desk.
Okay. But okay, now you're a buff guy. I would like you to break that bar into 3 pieces.
Correct.
Here in front of us. Come on, break it. Break it.
It's not going anywhere.
Let's break it. Come on.
I know.
I'd like to see you break it into 3 pieces. Once you do that, I'd like you to stuff it in your computer and send us each a third.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So as great as gold and silver are, as great as they are, and they are great stores of value, and everyone should have a little, it's running money, right? You can get across borders with it, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
It's not divisible and it's not portable.
Yeah.
And all the Bitcoin in the world fits right here. I don't have any on my phone. Don't SIM swap me. I don't keep it on my phone. Don't worry. But it could all fit right here. All of it in the world. And I can send you Satoshis, like 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin instantaneously. And if I use the Strike app, which we're investors in, I can do it for free. So free happens to be better than 30%. If I want to send money to my mother-in-law in El Salvador, which I don't have a mother-in-law in El Salvador, she's in Oklahoma. But if I did, and I sent her $1, she'd get 70 pesos. Right. Because Western Union and BIS and all these people take a cut. That's bullshit. That's just bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's custom. And we say, oh, it's just the way it's always been. No. Yeah. It's the way it's enforced. And Gabor, I love Gabor Gerbax from Van Eck. He posted this great thing today. He says, this is what backs the dollar. And it was a montage of all the military might of the US. And it's true that the threat of violence is what establishes the dollar as the reserve currency, but it is not backing the dollar. So I will debate Gabor a little bit on this. There is nothing behind the dollar. If I turn in my green piece of paper, I don't get gold. I don't get silver. I don't get one of those airplanes. I don't get a share of future tax revenues. I get nothing. It's simply belief and custom that you and I will barter a piece of paper or a digital transfer for a good or service.
Right.
And that's totally fine. Like, I don't have money. Like, I don't have money. I have this thing, right? I walk around with this thing and I use it, but it only settles to the ledger once a month. Once a month, it goes from the centralized database at MasterCard in COBOL down to ACH and 2 days later to FedWire. So once a month. So I don't carry money. And in fact, what I love, my granddaughter, who's 1, right? She's a Gen A Zoomer. I love that. So she's a Zoomer. Mm-hmm. She'll never have one of these.
Yeah.
No. She will never have a leather wallet. She will never touch a piece of paper money. She'll have no idea what it is. And she'll only use digital. Yeah, she'll be rich. She'll be driven by her car. And this is the world. There's this guy, Rod Collins. He's a futurist, and he wrote this book called Wiki Management. And he talks about, and he also wrote a book about collective intelligence. And he's been talking about this for 6-7 years. And his vision of the future, and I love this, is, you're in the back of the car because you will not drive. And the car will pull into this fast charging station, and it won't take 45 minutes. It'll take 2 minutes. You won't get out of the car and put your card in the machine.
Yeah, it automatically.
The car will have to have a wallet, will pay the machine. Yeah. And then it'll pull away, and you'll get in traffic. And you say, I don't want to sit in traffic. It'll pull into the fast lane, and it won't take a picture of your license plate and send you a bill. The car will pay the machine. Pay the lane. And then I would say, and because I'm a Waze premium subscriber, it'll send me on the fast route and send you all on the slow route. So I'm just kidding.
When do you think that happens, timeline wise?
10 years.
The self-driving part's going to take a while. 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's only 1. So she probably will experience it. My 12-year-old will
have to drive a bit.
Have to learn how to drive, and I'm kind of scared by that. And and my son is amazing, and he's very conscientious. But I was behind a student driver the other day. I was like, oh my God, I forgot how bad it is. Oh man, it's so. And any boy should be allowed to drive, because we all have. Well, I shouldn't say we all. Many of us have ADD, and some of us have it bad, like me. And so the fact that I was allowed to be behind, and I had a Bronco, I had a gigantic car.
Did you?
And at 16, I was not very focused, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I didn't get in tons of accidents, but I got in more than one. And
where'd you grow up, Mark?
Hurt anybody? Pardon?
Where'd you grow up?
All over. So I technically grew up in Seattle, but I moved when I was 16. I spent a couple years in Connecticut, and then a few years in Texas and Houston. I had a weird high school experience. I hated my parents. I've forgiven them. But 2 years in Seattle, hair down to my shoulders, bell bottoms. A year and a half in Connecticut, had to cut my hair and wear corduroys. And then half a year in Houston, where I had to get cowboy boots and a hat and go to the rodeo. Wow. But it taught me to be a chameleon, right? It taught me how to talk to new people, how to not be offended when you're not included, how to be resilient, because it was lonely and tough when you're, not accepted. But I forgave my parents, and it was a growth experience, because here's the thing. Only 2 states in the world. I'm a biology guy, growth and death. I prefer the former, hate the latter. And to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. And you have to, experience pain.
So true.
And it's like working out, right? If you're not sore the next day, you didn't work out very hard.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it wasn't useful, but it's more useful if there's pain involved. Mm-hmm. And whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, or look, Jamie's going to be in pain. I get it. And he didn't like it. And Elizabeth's going to be in pain, and she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And I get why they're going to fight. So, but at the end of the day, digital assets, digital technology, it's here to stay.
Yeah, of course.
It ain't going away. It's not, right? It's like in 1990, I don't remember what year it was, 6 or 7. Verizon and AT&T tried to get a bill through Congress to outlaw the internet. So that what you and I are doing right now would be illegal. Using voice over internet protocol would be illegal.
Huh.
And Al Gore, thankfully, cast the vote. He didn't invent the internet, but he actually saved it. He cast the vote that defeated the bill.
Interesting.
And it was close, right? It was really close. I mean, people actually, because of money, lobbying, corruption, just fancy term for corruption, said, yeah, okay, whatever. We'll make it illegal. Just like right now, where Ms. Warren's new bill wants to make the possession of a verifier node illegal. You're a criminal.
Right. That's crazy.
Just like, Executive Order 6102 in 1933. If you owned those gold bars, you were a criminal.
Yeah.
And until 1975, you were a criminal. Wow. Now, does that mean everybody got rid of their gold? No. Does that mean that they persecuted us? Yeah, sure, to make an example of them. But at the end of the day, this technology is so fundamental and so sound as an enhancement to everything we do.
Yeah.
And every business, from healthcare to government to logistics, everything will eventually migrate away from these centralized systems, monopolistic, duopolistic systems that have been great. I mean, my life's better, kind of. I mean, social media, I don't think makes it better, but except for Twitter. I do love Twitter. It will never be called X. Twitter, I love. Why? Because it connects people.
Yeah.
And it
in real time.
My wife laughs at me. She says, you don't have friends on Twitter. I'm like, I actually do. I mean, I built relationships with people all around the world, some who I've never met, others who I actually have met through Twitter. She says, that's ridiculous. And how do you trust them? Like, through interaction, right? How do you trust anybody? Right. Through interaction, through relationship.
I tell my wife the exact same thing. And I'm like, to be honest, Twitter kind of replaced The Office, post-COVID.
Good point.
I mean, working from home, you're not seeing, what I miss most about The Office is when I was young, my first job out of school, I would make rounds around the office and go to all the VP's offices and bullshit, talk to them, ask them questions, understand what's going on and learn. And now people are work from home,
You built
watch the video.
For granted.
Watch the video I posted this morning from the guy from the BBC from 1964, so the year after I was born. And he basically says, in the future, we won't commute, we'll communicate. So what you just described, right? That process of communicating within the office required you to commute into the office. Now we can sit wherever we are in the world. And he was saying this in 1964, saying anywhere in the world, you would be able to communicate with people, which is really a big statement back then. And that communication, that ability, right, to do what you're doing now, right? You're communicating with your audience, you're building loyalty, you're building trust. And that shared set of values, that shared set of beliefs is what communities are all about. And what I love about the truly global community is it's borderless, right? It's nation stateless. And now I saw this crazy thing the other day. I wish I could give him credit. I think it handles BTC online or something like that. I'm not going to get it right. But he does this show and an AI dubbed. So the top of his face was all him, but his mouth and chin was an AI speaking Spanish.
Okay.
With a perfect accent. I'm like, oh my God. Imagine that we're having this conversation just like we are.
I know.
But the people in Spain are hearing it in Spanish out of our mouths.
Yeah.
That's
freaking awesome.
That's
awesome.
It's here, actually.
And it's coming. It's here. It's here. And that part where it's simultaneous, not here yet. Well, it probably is, but we just don't have it because it's expensive. But it's coming. And that, once you remove the language. Like I read this amazing book that everyone needs to read. It's called Snow Crash. And I don't read a lot of books. My wife reads more books in a month than I've read my whole life. I mean, she's just crazy,
Wow.
but she's amazing. And I sit at home in my home office. I have this great bookcase and it looked very impressive. I said, "Oh, you read all those books?" I'm like, nope, wife did, but no. So I read an occasional book, but I did read Snow Crash this year and I couldn't put it down. It was amazing in that one, it just predicted the future and it coined the term metaverse and all this amazing stuff. But the premise of it was that the communication, babble, right, is the key to everything. And it's code. Speech is code.
Yeah.
And you think about it, think about some of the most remote languages. They just sound like guttural. But to those people, what we're saying in English,
sounds like I think about this all the time. I think about this all the time. Like, what does English sound like?
It's really interesting. Like I was having a Zoom with a guy, really interesting tech entrepreneur from France. And I was struggling. I'm like, I can't understand the accent. And, he completely understood mine, but I couldn't understand his. But in a world where we can take some of those barriers away, because each language is fine. It's not wrong or right. Yeah. It's not better or worse. Although I will say, I did learn this one thing. It's a cool, fun fact that, Chinese, back to Chinese, outperform in math and science versus the kids in other places, particularly in America. And one of the theories, and I think this is really interesting, is because of language. Mm-hmm. The term 11 and 12 and 13 are meaningless. They're stupid, right? What are they? In Chinese, it's 10-1, 10-2, 10-3.
Okay.
And to do math, it works better. So learning math in Mandarin makes more sense than 11, 12, 13, et cetera.
Gotcha.
Like, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. Oh, maybe it is right. That's interesting. Now, it could also be that they actually spend more hours and their TikTok teaches them lessons and our TikTok, tells people that Osama's a good guy. But which is crazy, right? That you got one company disseminating information to two different, groups.
That's the part that concerns me. Like the majority of people, as I said earlier, seem to be going in the right direction or the same direction in China, where there's so much.
They're getting us back for opium back in the day when we.
Anthony! Now you're opening up the whole. Now you got to read this book. The New World Order. Everything.
They're getting us back.
No. We kill everything goes to opium, right? Afghanistan, all of it. It's all about and look.
It's called China, New World Order.
Yeah.
I just started Diplomacy by Henry Kissinger, so I'm going to read through that, and then that'll actually probably going to be a good book to follow on afterwards.
Drug trade, global drug trade, very lucrative, very profitable for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people have been finding ways to escape reality for thousands of years, and it's not new. And we criminalize some things and we don't criminalize others, and it's because of money and power, and that's all fine, except when it gets like really nasty and bad, in some of the countries where you're having just the crazy deaths. Well, look at Chicago. I mean, crazy, so scary.
Out of control.
And we have people rotting in jail for things that are now legal in other states. It's just like, wait a second, the hypocrisy of it is insane.
You said it best a couple weeks ago, Anthony. Prison system's a powerful thing, right?
It is. I mean, I've thought about it when I first got into cannabis. I'm like, I'm white. I come from a decent upbringing. It was like, so I'm allowed to do this. Meanwhile, there's somebody sitting and rotting in prison for just possessing an eighth of cannabis and a joint. Like the hypocrisy there is, that's why I've been involved in cannabis for so long. Like, we need to shift societally, and the only way that we're going to shift societally is getting cannabis legalized and getting cannabis decriminalized. if that doesn't happen, then the entire system is not going to reform itself, because it's not going to just start with getting people
remember
out
there
of
was a
jail.
time when alcohol was criminalized, right? Prohibition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and now I got to deal with the Bud Light trying to get their identity back. So I got to watch 10,000 Bud Light ads. It's like, oh my God, guys,
Correct.
give it a break.
Dana White came to their rescue. I respect him for standing in his morals, but he's definitely just doing it for the check.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
Look, and
he could have asked for anything there.
You know what? That's exactly right. Hopefully he got a share of revenues like
I was going to say, he's for sure
Michael.
getting a rev share. He's for sure getting a rev share on the back end or something.
Hope he brought in Michael Jordan's
hope.
mom.
That one of the best movies, Air. And just the whole idea, right? That she broke the mold, and the fact that
what's crazy? You talk about the greatest basketball perhaps ever.
Yeah.
But his mom could go down as, maybe the greatest female businessman decision that's right
ever.
there. With.
Oh, no, it's not close. It's not close. I mean, $400 million this year.
And that shoe is probably selling more so now this year than what it was.
Oh, it is. Jordan's more popular than ever.
Yeah. And the fact that, that's a passive income stream.
Yeah.
Now, his body of work warrants it, right? What he did for basketball is incredible. And I still, maybe my favorite sports shot. Oh, that's a tough one. There's some good ones. But the one where he's playing defense on Magic and his eyes, and I say all the time, if I could have that focus, even for one day, I'd be like the greatest investor on the planet.
I remember I
mean,
ESPN, Michael Wilburn, who I have a lot of respect for, when Michael Jordan turned 50 and Magic was on the set and asked him, like, who is a better player? And Magic, just in a very subtle way, was just like, look, Larry and I brought the league back. Michael took the game global. He's the greatest player I've ever seen. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, I can stop debating on whether it's Magic or Michael. Now there's this LeBron Michael thing. And now I'm starting to see that I'm 47 years old, because most older people start to lean towards the player from their generation. Sure. And then I see Anthony over here shaking his head, looking at LeBron, and the
look at LeBron's numbers. Look at LeBron's numbers and his age this season.
Yeah.
They're historic.
No, I mean, it's hard to compare, and
I know
certainly we can never see them play against each other. But to me, it's in each age, right?
Yeah.
In each evolution of whatever game it is. For soccer, was Maradona better than Messi? It doesn't matter. Maradona was a joy to watch. Messi, I could watch Messi play soccer all day.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a magician. And it doesn't mean there aren't other great players. I mean, Mbappe is a good player, and there are other good players. But I was a soccer player growing up, and but I'm not like a crazy football fan. I don't watch Premier League, and I like Wrexham like everybody else. But to watch that man play the game,
it's beautiful.
Incredible. Or watching Pele in his prime. I mean, they transcend the rest of the people. So I think I don't think it's a silly comparison, because I like the comparison. I like to think about, and there are numbers, that you can match up. But I'll tell you, the one watching the French kid, oh my God.
From San Antonio?
7'3" guy.
Oh, Wembanyama? Yeah.
Pretty insane.
Oh my God. And I'm not saying he's going to be as good as those other guys, but it's unbelievable to watch someone that big do the things that he does.
How he dribbles and like a point guard.
It's unbelievable. I mean,
I go back to the same. I go back to the same athlete every time for me, and it's not athletic. I mean, I guess it is athletic ability, but it's dominance, and it's Tiger Woods. And quantitatively, his stuff is absurd for a decade.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, Wemby's. Well, I think Wemby's going to be a hell of a player.
Mark,
he'll own the NBA for a while.
Mark, your Twitter handle is at Mark Yusko. You built 150,000 followers. Wow, you have.
Yeah, and that's actually being in Twitter jail for the last 2 years. I've been at the same number within 100 for 2 years
We
because
gotta get Elon. Yeah, we
well,
gotta
no,
get
look,
Elon.
here's the thing. I definitely said some stuff about the flu hoax. I definitely said some stuff about the vaccine nonsense.
Yeah.
And I got put in jail. Fine. Okay. I actually had someone intervene on my behalf all the way up, not probably to Elon, but pretty high up. And I got out for about a week.
Yeah.
And then they went to the blue, and I'm not paying. And if you don't pay, you stay in jail. And I get it. And everybody's like, Mark, you're just dying on the, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. I'm like, I know, but my belief here is I had a check mark because I contributed to the platform when the platform was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I contributed content. I was verified because I was in the media. I had expertise. I shared that expertise for free. No, I never got compensated. I did it all for free. And so I feel like I deserve it. Now, they're saying, no, you need to contribute to the bit. No, I don't. So I'm not gonna. And so I'll be in jail forever. But Pomp has got like a gazillion followers now, and people can just follow him.
But you've got some good engagement when I look at your tweets. So even though it's 150,000, like I look at some people, and yes, numbers are a crucial thing. But there's one guy I was saying to Anthony the other day, has like 25,000 followers, and all he does is post stuff about Disney. Well, guess what? He got a sponsorship from Disney. So it's all about engagement, right? But listen,
it is about engagement. And look, Twitter is interesting. I use it as a micro blog. It's why I use all the hashtags. I get shit all the time. Why do you use so many hashtags? That's not what hashtags are for. I said,
it works.
You think they're for you. Yeah. They're for me, dummy.
Correct.
I can search my name and a hashtag, and I can see all the things that I was thinking related to that topic. So they're a filing system for me. And if they, somebody likes one or two, that I don't really care. But they're for me. And so that's the first thing. I use it as a microblog. The second is I use it for the interaction and the relationship. So my DMs are where the action is, where I built friendships. And my favorite story is I was on a vacation with my wife in Greece, and someone said, "You're in Greece? Do you want to meet the president of the biggest bank?" I'm like, "Yeah." So all right, meet me at this such and such hotel at such and such time, and we'll make it happen. This is when the Greek banks were shut down. Literally, the bars were down, and he meets me at the hotel, and people say, "You went with a total stranger?" I'm like, "We weren't total strangers. We've been talking to each other for years." But yes, we were total strangers, and I guess it could have been an axe murderer. But so he takes me to the Alpha Bank, and armed guards lift up the gate. I go inside and go upstairs, and it's me and the bank president and his assistant and an armed guard. And we talked for 2.5 hours. And I finally said, I gotta go. Like my wife, he would have talked to me all day because he had no one else to talk to. And my favorite part was, I said, I had this crazy idea. I said, what about a startup bank? Because then you wouldn't have none of the bad loans, and you could start and get the families that took all their money out and put it on the mattress. He said, I thought he was going to say, that's a stupid idea. I'm the bank. He said, that's a great idea. In fact, we'd only need about 10 million euros. I said, did you just say we, like you and me? He says, oh God, I only get paid 300,000 because I'm a government employee. So yeah, I would do this in a heartbeat. And I didn't even know where I could get a banking license.
Wow.
And my wife didn't want to move to Greece. So, but
great place.
Nice islands, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
But we could talk to you all day. That's for sure.
You're kind
wealth of knowledge, but I want to wish you and your family a happy holiday season. You've been incredible coming on and taking the time to speak with us. And I think our audience really understands and really appreciates just where we've been as a society and the impact that will have on crypto. And more importantly, as we touched on, Bitcoin moving forward, because to understand where we're going, we have to obviously understand where we've come from. And you're great at explaining how a lot of these decisions and things lay out. And I hope we can continue to have these conversations with you, because you're extremely got got a wealth of knowledge for sure, to say the least.
No, look, I appreciate it very much. Very kind words. And look, I love conversations, one, with people who, have done some research and have some ideas they want to talk about, and then who ask good questions. And I'll leave it with this last thought. So I was with a guy, a buddy who has a podcast, and he says, what makes a great podcast is, you get great guests and you just shut up and let them talk. I said, nope. What makes a great podcast? That makes a good podcast. If you get great guests, you can have good podcasts. What makes a great podcast is a host who actually does prep work and has some questions.
Yep.
Asks the questions, listens to the answer, and then asks a better follow-up question.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoy about these conversations is you guys do that. And we get to go into places that dive deeper into the topics. So look, we'll definitely do it in the new year. I wish you and all the listeners all the best for the holidays.
Go Irish. What bowl they playing in?
Go Irish. And I don't even know. We're in the El Paso, Texas Sun Bowl. It's like, I think it's called the Tony the Tiger Bowl. Like,
really? Were they ranked at the end of the season? Weren't they like top 20?
18 maybe,
yeah.
16.
That's what 18th
16.
rank gets you in this day and age? Wow.
Well, no, it's because we're not in a conference.
Yeah, I know.
So the way it works is, first, second, third, fourth, all have these guaranteed things. And because we're technically not in the ACC, but we play 5 ACC games, we're an independent. And there's only like 5 or 6 bowls that will take the independent if you don't get into the top. And so it's a feast or famine, pun intended, because now we got to go eat Frosted Flakes. So anyway, enjoy the holidays and talk to you in the new year.
All right. Thank
you for your time.
Hey everyone, so what'd you think of the video? Leave your comments below and let us know your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. As usual, subscribe to our channel by clicking on the link here. If you want to see more videos like this, then click on the link here and click on that bell for all notifications. Because most importantly, we want to know your feedback because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.